Okay, hey everybody, welcome. My name is Kenny Conley, and I'm here with Nick Blevins, and we want to invite you to a special conversation that we're sharing with you today. It's a conversation with two friends of ours. One of them, Amy Fenton. If you're connected to Ministry Boost, you know Amy. She's been a part of a lot of the things that we do. But we also have Chris Heaslip. He's the new CEO of Orange and part of Amazing Life Foundation. And we're gonna have a great conversation today. You know, Nick Blevins and I have been a part of the Orange family for more than a decade. And if you've been in ministry for any amount of time, you've known that a lot has happened at Orange in this last year. And Nick and I, over the course of the last, honestly, 6 months and longer, we've been kind of navigating this with Orange and with all the changes. And we thought it'd be great to have a conversation today with Chris and with Amy to talk about that. But hey, Nick, you wanna introduce yourself and say anything before we get started?
Yeah, and I'm also thinking Orange Conference just happened, which a lot of people were there for. Some people watched the opening session online. So I feel like a lot of the conversations we've been having at my church or with other leaders that are friends in other churches, and conversations you, Chris and Amy, have been having with churches, we're kind of going to have that here. So I'm really excited about it. Maybe we can do some introductions. People don't need to know who Kenny and I are. They don't really care. Let's start with Amy. Amy, if they don't know you because they haven't watched you with stuff we've done with Ministry Boost or
Now,
worked
what
with
rock
Orange.
have you been hiding under if you
It's
don't
true.
know Amy Fenton? So
That's
go
true.
ahead.
But go anyway, just in case.
Hey, okay, so I'm Amy. I have been with Orange. I'm going into my 12th year. I have been in the children's ministry world for 30 something years, longer than I care to admit. And I'm excited for this new season. This is fun. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
All
Guys,
right.
I'm just disappointed you didn't introduce her as the queen of VBS. I mean, isn't
Oh,
that
that's true. That is true.
I would say more the czar of VBS. I don't know. I
Czar.
don't think Queen's high enough, you know?
ah,
Quite the right title. That is true. A lot of people know her from that too. I also call her the Joanna Gaines of children's ministry overhaul. You know what I mean? If people watched our
That's
Multiply Ministry
true.
conference, because a lot of times children's ministries and some churches, some large ones, need a little bit of an overhaul, and Amy will help churches do that
let's
from
just
time to
say
time.
let's just say what it is. A lot of them are dumpster fires, and Amy to the rescue. She's there to fix it. She's there to move that wall. Let's put some shiplap up. We're gonna make this place
Uh-huh.
beautiful again.
It's gonna be great.
I love that. I love doing that. Yes.
is she getting a reality TV show coming out soon?
She
I,
should.
I,
It would be
I think it's
entertaining.
a
I'm
great
telling you.
idea.
Yeah, I'd be
Look,
for
she's
that.
excited. Her eyes
Yeah.
got real big smile. I think
No
we're onto
church,
something.
no church would be like, yeah, please film our dumpster fire before it becomes, you know what I mean? Before it becomes the great thing.
True.
Anyway, Chris, how about you?
Well, guys, great to hang out. Thanks for having me on. I'm originally from New Zealand, so you just if you're wondering where the weird accent. I have a friend, and he keeps calling me South African. It's like like a jab to try and get out of me. So not Australian, not South African. I'm from New Zealand. Lord of the Rings and sheep and all that. That's us down under. Came to the States in 2014 and was the founder of a company called PushPay. And so I had the privilege of leading that team. And honestly, like I got to tell you guys, working with churches, like it's a calling. Like I loved it. It was the best role I've ever had in my life. And so to be here, 5 years after that, now working with churches again is just awesome. I mean, I love it. I love getting to hang out with people in ministry because the heart that they bring to what they do every day is just exceptional. So I'm having a blast despite some of the challenges I'm sure we'll talk about, and love how we get to serve people. And so PushPay did obviously mobile and online giving and grew really quickly. And by the time I stepped off the team, we were almost 500 people. So it was a crazy
Wow.
rocket ship ride. Grew really fast, and it was great fun.
Were you there? I'd love to hear some more about the story of PushPay, but a quick question. Were you there when the PushPay acquired Church Community Builder, CCB? I know a lot of churches would use that and be familiar with that too.
Yeah, I left right before that all happened,
Okay.
and so we have been looking for a long time of like how to expand, into different areas. And one of the things I thought about was like, pastors don't wake up in the morning thinking about how to get more giving, right? They wake up and they think about how to do ministry. And so even then, 2017, 2018, we were thinking like, how do you not just have a tool that allows people to give and be generous, but actually how do we build a tool that equips pastors to actually be more effective in ministry. And at our conference in 2019, I talked a lot about this concept of how do we nurture our people in a deeper way. And we had started working on some tools around that to specifically equip people to find people in the congregation who were just not being ministered to. And so that was, I think, what kind of led to the CCB acquisition, and then ultimately to some of the strategy they did after that. And so I think I'd done a lot of work and research and understanding how churches kind of find and maybe miss people that are just sitting in a pew but are not showing up somewhere on a CHMS. And I think that's some of the same problems that we have in kids ministry is hey, we have these kids, but how are we actually engaging them? It's really interesting when I got a chance to meet Tyler and Connie, who were the founders of Amazing Kids and on staff at Gateway here in Texas. Their heart for ministry was how do we equip kids pastors with tools and software and media so that they can do the two things that only they can do, which is connecting with kids and training and leading volunteers. And, when you spend hours and hours and hours writing curriculum or you don't have the right tools, we're not using our time as effectively as we should. And so it was it just resonated with me based on this whole background that I had of thinking about some of these concepts even 5 years before.
Yeah. And we're going to get to Orange and how that all came together. But real quick, PushPay wasn't your first thing. It was oh, let's do this. And then it is, reached all these churches and grew to 500 people. There was some stuff before that. And then you've also even done some things afterwards. So give us a flyover, the before and a little bit since before the Orange merger.
Yeah. I trained as a, accountant. I went to university to study that and then worked for a big four accounting firm. And it was a great experience, but I always felt called to entrepreneurial ventures. And I just continued to try different things, and all of those failed. So ultimately, I had ended up starting 14 companies by the age of 30. So I was 0 and 14. So if people think, that stops you getting a big head when you're I'm 1 and 15, it's not really that impressive. And when I was really frustrated with God, I was reading my Bible and I came across this verse, and I think it's Proverbs 23, and it says, "Do not wear yourself out to get rich, for if you chase after money, it will grow wings and fly away like an eagle towards heaven." And I was like, what does that mean? And I felt like God said, hey, Chris, you started these businesses because you wanted to get something. And in my economy, it's focused on giving. And so it's literally you should focus on giving value and serving and helping people, and you will become successful as the byproduct of that. And so that whole revelation literally changed my whole approach and perspective towards business. And even what we do now is we're focused on serving, not focused on getting. And so when we literally 2 months later after that, I met Elliot and we started a giving company. So if ever, there was, hearing from God, that was it. So, that was the thing that kind of took our whole approach was serving, adding value, providing service, and making sure that people have a good experience. And whether you're in ministry or business, that should be the heart, is not, hey, how big is my ministry? How many people show up? But ultimately, how am I serving the people that I'm entrusted with?
Now, I've never asked you this, so this will be the first time. I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about it, but after PushPay, you did jump into some other things, but what was what were you seeking to do? What were you thinking? Okay. If anybody watched, was at Orange Conference, they saw John Acuff in his presentation. At the very beginning, he made a joke about you because he said, he asked you, why are you doing this, with Orange? Because you could do whatever you wanted. You'd been successful at PushPay. You could start another business. You could invest in this. You could, whatever, is a clean slate. And you told him why you were doing this, which I'd love for you to share. But even before this came along, what was your thought after PushPay? What am I going to do now? What did you think?
Yeah, I was semi-retired. PushPay obviously did well financially, and my goal was just to help other people. The metaphor I used was moving from the player on the field to the coach in the box. And so, I don't want to sit around the house all day. My wife would, get sick of me and boot me out. And so she's like, go do something, be useful, help people. And so I partnered with Matt, who worked with me at PushPay, who was the VP of sales. And we partnered with Patrick Lencioni to create some software called Leader that helps organizations grow and develop their staff. And so like it was just from a position of like, hey, this is something that we are really passionate about. And I think that people, one of the things people ask me is like, what advice would you give to your younger self? And the answer is like, focus on calling, not career. Careers is like mercenary. And again, what can I get? Calling is like, God's called you to this thing. And so I think that people misunderstand that actually opportunities are not something that's, you're supposed to go get. It's something that like God has made this for you because of who you are and what you're supposed to do. And so it was like a way that we ran our business at PushPay was both based on growing and developing people and creating opportunities for them. And it's the same thing here, with Amazing Life in Orange is like, how do we create an environment where people grow and develop? And ultimately we put them in a situation where they can learn and grow. And I think people want that. And so it's just part of like who you are. It just comes out of that. And so, we got to partner with Patrick Lencioni and bring a lot of his principles to like articulate those and enshrine them in the software so that it actually helps kind of people to follow that process rather than just like, hey, I believe these things, but there's not really a system to do that.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask a question too? As you've stepped in to lead Orange and build a better future, so much of Orange is centered around, fighting for the next generation, raising up the next generation. And I know you're more than just, an accountant entrepreneur, but I know a little bit from the conversations that we've had and what you shared at Orange. I know you've got a family, you've got kids. Like, what is it about Orange and the mission of Orange that resonates personally with you as you were once a boy growing up and following Jesus, and you've got kids? So can you kind of connect the dots there too?
Yeah, I mean, there were two men. My mother was a single mother, and I grew up without a father in the house, and so I was trying to figure a lot of stuff out, faith and others. And there were two people that were instrumental in my personal, faith journey, formation, spiritual discipleship. A Sunday school teacher and a youth group leader. And Matt Berry was the single person who had the biggest impact on me. He literally, I met him at the Pentecostal church that I went to when I was a teenager, and he just took time, and he's like, he spent time with me. He wanted to get to know me, and then through building that relationship, started to pour into me and challenge me and say, hey, like let's read our Bible together. Let's go to let's do a Bible study with a group of other young guys, and that kind of 4-year period during high school literally transformed my life. And because one guy took time. And I don't know if he did that with 50 other people, or maybe he did it with a handful, but like the impact that one person had on my life. And so that I never went to college and got into mischief and all of that, because one guy took time and said, here's how you need to think about these things. Like that is so powerful. And so when we think about the opportunity that we get to have in kids ministry and in students ministry, like we are literally shaping the faith of the next generation. And so if we as a partner, as a vendor to churches aren't doing that faithfully, we aren't doing as good a job as we could effectively by giving you the right tools, or we're just not teaching the Bible as correctly as we should, or in a way that is the way that you want it to be done, like I feel like we are failing you as a partner. And so I think that as we kind of approach it, like there's not a better mission on the planet than serving the next generation. There's not, because, like you've heard the cliche that like the kingdom of God is only one generation away from going extinct. And I think that we have like, one of the things people say to me is like, hey, you did well financially, what is that like? And I say, it's terrifying. Like, because when you realize that when you're given this responsibility, you have to steward that, because one day we are going to have to give an account for what we were given. And it's not just, did you buy a jet ski? It's like, what did you do with what I gave you? And so that applies to us as we run kids ministries too, is like, were you faithful? Did you do a good job? Like the Bible talks a lot about that in the Gospels. The parable of the talents is like, did you do a good job with what I gave you? Maybe I didn't give you 500 kids in your ministry, but did you do a good job with the 10? Because I'm going to hold you accountable to that. So it's not just like, hey, you have millions of dollars, and how do you think about being accountable to that? It's like, are we doing faithfully what we should be doing with what we're being entrusted with? And I think that both as a vendor, and a partner to so many churches, and for all of us in the roles that we're in, should be the thing that keeps us up at night, thinking about am I truly doing a good job? Because that will drive you to really, think long and hard about what we're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great.
Amy, it's been, and this, I'd love to hear both of you talk about this a little bit, because one of the things you've done that a lot of people may not know is you've done conversations like this, just private with church leaders, hundreds of churches, probably, and hundreds and hundreds of leaders. And it's been it was January, I guess, when this, or maybe January, right? When it was announced that Amazing Life and was acquiring the Orange assets and things like that. And it was kind of like a merger. And it's been a little bit of a bumpy ride in some cases, right? It's not been just a smooth landing on that plane. So I'm curious, what would you want people to know? Because obviously we live in a world, I don't know if this is what you experienced at PushPay, Chris, but I always feel like the world of kids ministry and student ministry is kind of like a big church where, people talk, people know each other, people make up things, people, whatever. And so some things are true, some things aren't. And it's been a little bit bumpy. What has it been like for you all? And what do you wish people knew that maybe they don't know, if all they've heard is something on social media or a snippet here online or whatever?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll answer first and pass it to Chris. I think there's been so many questions about what is staying the same and what is changing. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit, but one of the first things we did, my first visit to the Dallas offices, Chris said, "Can you sit down with us? We want to look through the 9 theological insights. Like, let's look at what that is, what that means, and decide if we still align with that." Like that is key. That's core to who we are. And so we sat down and went through those and totally agreed. Like, yes, we still align with this. This is who we are going to be. This is who we have been historically, and this is who we're still going to be. So I would say those 9 theological insights, we still believe in lead small principles. We still believe in partnering with parents. We still believe that the church and the home are the 2 greatest influences in the life of a child, and those 2 combined influences can have the greatest impact. The things that people know to be true core to Orange are 100% still true. So I want people to know that.
That's good. Chris, what about you? What about those 4 months? It's been, because you have a lot of stuff going on. You've been developing a lot. We'll talk about some of that, like what's changing, what's new. That's going to be exciting. But it isn't like that's the only thing you've been able to focus on. You've been on calls with church leaders and you've had conversations and you've had to deal with things that you maybe not even thought were even there when you were putting this together. Maybe over, I guess it was like late last year. It's like this happens all the time. Kenny and I work with organizations when they're hiring kids and student staff. And I always say, in a perfect world, everybody would know exactly what they're getting. Like the church would tell the whole story. The candidate would tell the whole story. I'm sure but that, doesn't always happen. So what's it been like for you? And what do you wish people knew?
Yeah. And, Amy has been incredible because, I've been around churches. I got to partner with churches. I got to talk to, tens of thousands of executive pastors. But learning the kids ministry world has been a steep learning curve. And Amy has been a fantastic guide. You guys are laughing. Why are you laughing? I mean,
because we know how weird it is. And you can get everything.
No, we're sorry. We apologize right now on behalf of our kind. We apologize.
And youth ministry too. I mean, let's be honest.
Right.
Youth ministry, it's not like it's just kids ministry. Youth ministry too can be quite the weirdest parts of a church sometimes. So, and
he's been kind of the deep end. Yes, for sure.
I think the coolest thing about it though is, kids ministry folks have the biggest hearts of anyone on the planet. Like, I honestly think that's been my experience of just 4 months in is like, wow. Like, honestly, what's amazing is how deeply you will care for the kids that you get to interact with and the ministry that you get to do. And I think that, like, you can figure out everything else if you have that care and attention for the kids that you're being entrusted with. And I think that's been the biggest thing that I've seen. But what that sometimes, turns into is like, hey, we've been entrusted with this, and like, we want to be able to ensure we have the same level of trust with you, our partner who's writing the curriculum. And I think a lot of the feedback was like, hey, we really want to ensure that there's more biblical depth in the curriculum that we're receiving. And, when we say that, it can mean so many different things to different people. So we wanted to be really specific about it And actually, we put together this document that has our 5 commitments moving forwards to all of our partners, because we wanted to take this seriously, not just like, hey, we're telling you these things and changing them 5 months later, but like, these are things that we really believe in anchoring on. And so, hey, there's these 5 things. One of them is more biblical depth. And people have just said to me, hey, Chris, like, we spend a lot of time adding scripture back into the outlines. Can you just add it in there? And it would save me hours of prep time a week. And just thinking back to, what Tyler's heart was when we started on this journey, I'm like, of course, because if that's another hour, 2-3 hours that we can save you, that you can actually connect with kids, like, of course, why would we not do that? So I think adding more biblical depth in, making sure that the story ties back to the bottom line in a much deeper way. Like, these are things that are just, I think, a common sense. And Amy and I have had just, really positive responses from churches who were just like, thank you. Like, thank you for just showing up and making these changes, because it's going to save us so much time, and making sure we teach virtues the right way. Like, it's just been like such a positive experience from people who, I guess, wanted that to change. And just because we're the new people, we're able to make some of those changes happen in a short period of time. And just through the lens of trying to make it easier and to serve our partners in a better way.
Yeah. And I want to say how much I appreciate this too, because I know that what I've learned about you too is, even before you began this journey of, emerging with Orange, and that you spent you talked to 50 churches, to find out, what you're getting into, what their experience had been. And since you guys, merged with Orange, you've probably talked to more than 100 churches. And what I know is, like, Nick and I, we talk to church leaders every day. And there's been lots of times where we've had church leaders call us really frustrated, really sad, really mad. And we've been able to say, just talk to Chris. Like, talk to Chris and Amy. And people are like, have been very like, what, I can just talk to Chris and Amy? It's like, so the level of accessibility that you've created has been like a breath of fresh air. And I think so helpful for so many people. But I want to even say too, I was at Orange Conference, and when you shared those 5 commitments that you made to us, this was really great. And Nick, maybe we can put this on, link it to the video here too, in case you weren't there, or in case you aren't an Orange partner, you can see that as well. But like, literally, as you were saying that and you were talking about that, I got an email on my phone, and on my phone was that those 5 commitments. So I don't know. I know you guys planned that. That was just too perfect. But I loved what you said too. Is like, this is our commitment to you. We expect you to hold us accountable, that we are true to this as well. And so that's just like, that's really helpful. I think it speaks a lot of integrity and your commitment to excellence, and commitment to actually serve churches that are trusting you to do that. So thank you for that. That's great.
I just say, like, building trust requires communication. And, there were some churches that weren't happy, like, and Malachi or I, like, we're happy to get on a call with all of them and just have a conversation and hear, and it doesn't mean we always agree. Like, I think, even within the church, like, we don't agree on everything, but I think we can at least have a conversation, because we're all people. And being able to experience that, Amy's done, literally hundreds of calls too, like, but just to be able to tell people, like, I like this or I don't like this, like, it's just mature to be able to have those conversations. And I think that, how can we improve if we don't know we need to improve? And that was where the reciprocal part of the commitment was, is like, please pray for us. We need your prayers. And if you have feedback, please share it with us, good, bad, or otherwise, because otherwise we don't know. And I think, that's maybe the good thing or the bad thing about not being from the Kidman world, is like, I need you to help me to be able to make sure that we're doing things the right way and improving, because we just want to continue to serve you and do it with excellence.
Well, and that's been helpful, because I know just last week I sent a small book to you guys of, like, as a 20-year user of Orange, like, I had, and it's just one of those things, like, hey, I want to share my voice too. And I remember messaging Amy and say, like, hey, who do I need to send this to? Tyler, you or whatever. She goes, oh, make sure you copy Chris on this too. He wants to read that. He wants to know. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to add Chris on here too. I mean, go ahead and grab a cup of coffee and sit down and read this book. It's going to take a while, but that commitment to wanting to receive feedback, that's amazing. That's so great.
Kenny's not known for brevity, Chris, just so you know. No. So it's good. It's really helpful, but he's not exactly a bullet point communicator. Just be aware.
No, Chris, you think I talk a lot. Kenny talks more than me. I
love it.
One thing that I tell people when I talk to them, it's interesting because there are little things that people get frustrated about, and they'll post on Facebook, or they'll, take to Instagram or whatever, instead of just reaching out. Like, I can't find this in the curriculum anymore, and I am so mad at everybody. And so I've reached out to all of those people one-on-one, and or our orange specialists, other people have. If it's somebody they have a relationship with, and we've just said, hey, we're in a season of listening and learning. Like, posting that you're mad that you can't find something on Facebook doesn't help us nearly like it helps us when you just pick up the phone and call me or email me, and I'll call you back and say, tell me why you loved that. How did you use it in your curriculum? I'll pass that feedback along. Maybe that's something we took away by mistake. But even if not, we'll help you figure out how to navigate the changes. So that's been the thing that I've loved, is we know we don't have it perfect. And we're listening and learning, and we're truly listening and learning. I know people say that and they don't mean it, but we're saying that and we truly mean it.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to that. I have to go back though, because Chris, I think we all might have missed one of the things I took away from what Kenny said, which is that he was on his phone while you were talking at your session at Orange Conference. I just don't want to pass.
My fault for not being a good communicator. I'm still not a youth communicator. So, if you let the account.
I did not say I was on my phone. I got an email and it alerted me. Okay, I don't have alerts turned off on my phone. Stop making fun of me, Nick. Stop making fun of me.
I couldn't let that go. It was right there. It's low hanging fruit. But what I actually want to ask Amy is, you kind of alluded to it right there. A lot is changing. A lot has changed. Staff has changed at Orange. The 9 Theological hasn't changed. The lead small, the heart, the strategy, the philosophy, all that. But there's a lot of other stuff that's changing. Parts of the curriculum, more biblical depth. And we're going to get to some of the new things. But even before we get to that, change is hard. And that's why people complain on social media. Sure. You don't even know. I mean, especially an organization your size that serves thousands and thousands of churches, you have no idea really how much people like certain elements, because there's no data on your side to know how much do they actually use that. So what has that been like for you, Chris and Amy? I mean, Amy, you've been there, so you're experiencing it on the team. Chris, you're leading it, and you're having to deal with a lot of probably the complaints and the errors that get shot. So what's that been like? Big changes, small changes, having to navigate that as a leader?
Well, from my seat, 99% of the feedback has been positive. So I think whenever you hear feedback, it can always feel like, hey, there's a lot of noise. But by and large, it's been really positive, and people saying thank you. Like, hey, I've really wanted this for a period of time, for 5 years, and you've managed to just come in and change it in a short space of time. And so I think that's the first thing. I think that whenever you're trying to improve things, it's just easy to think of adding and adding and adding and adding. And the problem with that in general is your staff just get burned out. And because it's you have to figure out what are we trying to do and how do we do it with excellence? And that means that we can't do everything, and being clear about that. And so, we were sending DVDs to 65 customers, and I guess I have to be the bad guy to say, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. We love you, and we're not sending DVDs effective next month, right? And it's just so I'm sure those people have effigies of me that they're stabbing every night because they didn't get their DVDs this month.
You and Netflix, right? You and Netflix.
Yeah, that's true.
Both.
Yeah.
So I understand that people have a way of doing things, and when you're upset, that the feedback of course is frustration, and so I think those things are kind of the obvious ones that everyone's just like, I can't believe you did that, and it just takes someone to come along and ask some questions and revisit why that's the case. But then on the flip side of that frees up resources to do other amazing things like build software and launch brand new curriculum lines, special needs, and things that people are like, we really like all that. And I think that my ask or context, I guess, is just these things go together, because you can't launch all of these new things if you're still shipping DVDs to people. And so from just a business perspective, and the experience I have is you can't just do this and continue to do all these other things. There has to be a little give and take in the mix there.
You might not realize it, but you just said something that every church leader should listen to, because churches are the most notorious for 100 or 200 things. I describe it like 200 little streams as opposed to like 6 rushing rivers. They just
Yep.
got a million ministries and programs. I was thinking kids ministry, people were listening to Chris thinking, yes, tell my leadership that we need to not be doing this many things, but that is a real thing. Amy, for you real quick, what has that been like leading through that change? I mean, you've been in the thick of it in so many ways.
I think that just there's something to be said about having conversations. And so I'm always going to fight for that, because every person that's been confused about something or needs clarity, when we've had a conversation, it has always ended well, always. So even like Chris said, we don't always agree on everything, but goodness, we have solutions to help people with the issues they're struggling with. And so and I count it a privilege. I count it a privilege to do what I do every single day. I love the churches that we get to serve, and we don't take that for granted. And so, when I see somebody is concerned about something, just to pick up the phone and have a conversation has made all the difference in the world.
When I just want to tell you, Amy voraciously advocates for our partners. So, she'll just call me up and like, Chris, you have to change this. You have to change it. And so as a result, we've literally added stuff back on the list, that got taken off because Amy advocated, explained the context in a really mature way. And I think the point was to the point about responsiveness, if we hear the feedback, not to say we agree with everything, but the point is hey, obviously the context and the feedback is insanely helpful when we're trying to make those decisions.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to ask a question. Maybe this is taking a step back. So if I am Nick, you can reroute this conversation or whatever. But I want to, and maybe it's the elephant in the room too, of a year ago, a little over a year ago, we all got devastating news about the significant moral failure and abuse at Orange. And I remember all across the Orange family, it was we all shuddered of what does this mean? What is this? And for the last year, and Amy's a close friend of Nick and I's. And so we were on the phone with you weekly, if not more often than that, navigating you from a staff perspective. And then even with a merger with Amazing Life, I remember we were with you in Orlando at CPC when you were finding out, and Nick and I were like, don't go talk to Amy right now. She looks like she's upset, whatever. I mean, it's just it's one of those things this whole thing has been such a roller coaster, with all these questions, great questions about curriculum, why are you taking this away, and all this sort of stuff. But it's also it's layered on top of a year of uncertainty, of disappointments and frustrations and pain, just going through and looking at the social media feed over the last year, and that'll put anyone on, medication. And Amy, I want to, maybe this is a good question for you, because I think some people, can sometimes just get mad because it's not like this, or it's not like it was. Why can't we just be like it was anymore? But that's kind of not even that's not like a question based in reality anymore, right? I mean, where we are today, where, Orange is with Amazing Life, is actually probably in some ways it's an answer to prayer of would Orange be here today? If there wasn't a partnership with Amazing Life. I remember when back in January when we were there, and I remember when, there were some layoffs and things. And I remember sitting with Nick and asking what are we going to do? I've been using Orange for 15 years. I love the strategy. I love, is this going away? Is this going to happen? So Amy, you've been navigating, and I just think it's appropriate to give space for the fact that all of this change has been hard, but it's also been shaping a new way through tragedy. And it's not just because it's not necessarily just because of a mistake that was made a year ago. There were some course corrections that needed to be made probably many years before that. So I don't know. This is probably a loaded question. I don't even know what I'm asking anymore. I've been talking too long. But Amy, I mean, you were there. You've navigated this whole thing. What do you do with that?
Yeah. Kenny, that's a great question. I'll say this. In my life, where I am in my life, I have walked through a lot in my lifetime. Sometimes I think my life could be a Lifetime movie of the week. And the thing that I try to teach my kids, and that has been true, is through it all, the good and the bad, the hard and the heartbreaking and the sad and the highest highs, God has been so faithful to us through every season, and He has used it all the horrible and all the great. And so I, in this season of life, and I try to teach my kids to do this at a much younger age, just walk through going, God, like, what do you have for me now? Where am I supposed to go for today? I've had this conversation with Chris and going, I feel cold right now. I wake up every day and go, where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? And I feel like I'm called here. The past year has been hard. I mean, it's been really hard, but I am at a place where I can share that. I've been really honest with Chris when the times have been hard. I have called him a lot and pushed back on a lot of things, and we've wrestled with a lot of things, but I appreciate that I just have somebody I can call and do that with. And I've been honest and open, and I think that they're seeking to understand, more about what the Orange staff has been through, and yet also get us really pumped up and excited about the future and where we're headed and what's coming. And so, it's just that thing of holding joy and sadness, and at the same time they can both exist in my world while I'm seeking to move forward.
Yeah.
Chris, do you have anything to add there?
Well, I think whenever we're in these situations, it's heartbreaking, right? And I think that we obviously, stand against all forms of abuse, and we don't, like, obviously it's horrible. I think the thing the church has different than every single other organization on the planet is, it's the bride of Christ, and the hallmarks of what we stand for are, also grace and forgiveness, right? That we should be heartbroken when people fall and when these situations happen. And I think, coming in at the the tail end of that whole thing, I think, being able to engage with people and have grace and to give them space to be able to process through that is just really important. I think there's a lot of people in the church world, kids pastors who, a lot of churches go through some form of moral failure. And I think the thing that keeps people going, and a lot of what people said to me, I was like, why did you keep doing this? And the answer was, because God called me here. And I think that's the right answer, is not to stay somewhere that's, toxic or like anything like that, but also when God has called you somewhere, He's going to equip you and help lead you through it. And so, I got only a very small part of that at the tail end of the whole thing. And so coming in January, our focus was just how do we kind of steer the organization forwards. And I think the hard thing is this tension between the individual and the whole. And as a leader, this is a tension that we always feel, in kids ministry. It's like, hey, I've got this one disruptive kid. Like, how do I deal with that? Because I've got the whole. But at the same time, I know I need to care for this individual. And so this tension is a tension we always feel as leaders, that we're trying to figure out how to provide space for, these two things that happen simultaneously. And I think that trying to find that is always, it's a tough balancing act. And I think that, as we look forwards, I think that the Orange strategy, and Amy's given me a bunch of readings and learned so much about it. And I think the tendency that people have is to throw away everything when you kind of look forwards. And I think that's unwise, and in a lot of cases not biblical, because the strategy that Orange pioneered and for 29 years has helped churches adopt is relevant today as it ever has been. And people were saying, hey, let's just get rid of that because of whatever's happened. And the answer is, like, the strategy is as relevant and should be as relevant today as it was 5 or 10 years ago. And I think as we think forwards, like, my question that I ask myself is that how do we build that out and keep the heart of what made Orange special the same, and the way that we do things and the methods that we do things with have to change and evolve, and they have to get significantly better, because I don't think that we as the whole church, we're not really winning at the moment. And I think that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is like, how are we going to help churches win, to engage their community, where kids want to come to church for the first time when they've never come to church? How are we going to get kids who have been a couple of times, who say to their parents, like, it's Sunday morning, can I please go to church today? Like, we will know that we are succeeding as the church when that is what it looks like. When kids who are there are like, hey, the church is giving me answers and giving me meaning and helping me find God in a way that I'm not seeing over here. That's how we'll know that when we're winning. And so that's what I think is our team is focused on. Despite all of that, like, we have to figure out how to do this, because this is the future and the vision and the mission that we're called to do. And we don't have a plan of how to answer all those questions today, but that's the bar that we're trying to live up to. And how do we answer those questions? I think we're trying to learn and grow and figure it out, but that's what success looks like for us.
You said something, I hope I can say it. If not, I guess I'll have to edit this out later. But you said something in a conversation that we had offline that was driving you. And I think the way you said it was you were asking the question, how to help every church reach 10 new kids. Was it a month? Something like that, and disciple 10 new kids a month. And I thought that is a great question. And I think it's great that you're asking that, because churches, that's what churches want to do. But at the same time, in the kids student world, we're, week to week there's a pressure there, and you want to help churches do that. And you've launched a lot of new stuff. I mean, we'll probably link to the opening session. You all published it on the Orange YouTube channel. They can watch, but tell us more about some of the things you're doing, like A-Play, the special needs curriculum, the special needs training, and some of those things.
Yeah, I think it just starts with, look, why can't we bring this innovation muscle that we directed into giving before? I feel like in some ways it's a weird continuation of some of those things, but it's like we're focusing all of that time, attention, and money and resources, and 15 years now of trying things and failing, and now like laser focused at kids ministry. And how do we make the world of kids ministry so good that the tool set that you're now equipped with are like world-class tools? And so the first one that we heard from people was like, when they interact with us in our organization, they just get a big list of files that they have to download and sort out and it's like, my first question is, why is it this way? And, obviously it is the way it is because someone decided that. And so it's like, how can we serve through making that significantly better? And so building out A-Play, which is a way to have a pre-built playlist that you can display in your environments on an Apple TV, or in about 6 weeks on a computer, to be able to display that in a way that like just saves so much time. And the tools are all included as completely free as part of the Orange curriculum, because again, that's the heart that we're trying to bring to the table. And so like, that's just an example, and the first of like, hopefully many things in terms of innovation. Sounds scary because it sounds new, but it's really just a better way of doing things, right? Is really what that means. And then, kids, how do we find special needs curriculum? My middle son was diagnosed with autism. And so when we started doing this, I'm like, we're going to do this. I don't care if it makes money or not. We're just going to do it anyway. And if it helps 5 churches, that's great. Like, it was worth doing. So we partnered with Kim Botto to make a whole training masterclass for churches to be able to train their volunteers on how to build an environment that special needs kids want to come to and feel safe in. And that's just been a huge investment from us. And then the final one was around worship. One of the things that I learned when I got here is we just made original songs. And, I'm like, well, why is that the way it is? And so we're now tracking 100 in the next 12 months, 100 of the leading CCLI songs, worship songs that are specifically tracked for kids. That, again, this makes it so much easier, because when you build out your service, you just click and drag the songs and it's all kind of taken care of. And so, again, it's just providing resources and tooling that we should be world-class. And if we have a heart to serve, and for us to serve churches and for you to serve kids, like they should have the best. Like, how do we provide all of the tools and media that allow us to serve them with the world's best tools and media?
Yeah, mm-hmm. I love that. And for those who may not know Kim Botto, we're big fans of Kim Botto. She is a children's pastor at Crossroads in Cincinnati for 2 decades, maybe. And she's awesome. we just did a webinar a couple months ago about her new book that came out. And so when we didn't know, we didn't find out until the opening session of Orange and saw the video. We're like, oh my gosh, is this a secret? Because we didn't actually even know this either. And we were thrilled by that partnership. And I think the A-Play is amazing. Orange produces so much great content, but sometimes the weakness also is that there's so much great content, and being able to better manage that's a huge win. And the worship songs, amen, because it's not just you guys are producing lyric videos and motion videos and all the things that we love, because I don't sing, so I need it up on stage, and we need great lyrics. We need people that'll get up there and do the aerobics things that we do on stages in kids ministry. So that's amazing. And I know that you got lots of other things up your sleeves too, and we're very excited about that. So this is there's no reason why can't we lead in this area? Like, why can't KidMin have the best? Why can't I have the best things?
Now I can, honestly. Like, I feel like, God called me to this, for specifically to help, bring some of this innovation. Because I said the next generation, like this mission of serving the next generation is the most important mission that we can have as the church. And so we're actually doing we're going to do a live virtual event on the 20th of September. And we have a whole new slate of stuff coming later this year as well. So like, this is, conference was just the first step of where we're going. And so it's like, we want our organization to be known for continuing to add stuff that is serving churches. And again, most of that is just going to be included completely free, because that's the heart that we want to bring to serving all of you guys who are doing such phenomenal work.
It was fun, because it was a very different Orange. Nick and I both been to all the Oranges except for one, and it felt different. There were components of opening night that felt like an Apple iPhone event. Like, it's like everyone's cheering, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, we're getting songs, we're getting worship songs!" Like, it was like the best thing, and it was definitely like that's new. And so, and the idea to be able to celebrate great innovation, great new tools, I think is a welcome add to all this. So this is great. I don't know. I know Nick was going to ask this, but I don't know. I know you shared. We're gonna link to the video of the opening session, and in September, are there any goodies, any sneak peeks that we can know of, like
Kenny's
maybe
trying to get
coming?
the exclusive. Oh. He's trying to get an exclusive sneak peek.
Yeah, I'll give you one. We are working on a whole Spanish curriculum that is going to be included, again, completely free for all Orange partners. We know a lot of communities are like, they want to have kind of native Spanish curriculum that allows them to serve that community. And so, again, like, that's just something we were like, hey, we, as an organization that serves, tens of thousands of churches, like, we want to be able to use the resources and the reach that we have to be able to do that, where, maybe for a lot of churches, they don't need that in particular, but like, across a large number of our churches in California and Texas and in Florida, they're like, hey, this would help us like massively. So we're doing a whole bunch of work around that. That'll come out later this year. But yeah, like, just that shows you kind of like how we're thinking about the stuff is like, these are things that everyone should do as part of curriculum, right? Because it's just so important to have whole communities of people, special needs and Spanish, like, that are just excluded from being able to participate. Like, that makes no sense to me. So the more that we can use the reach that we have to do those kinds of things, the better off we are. So, and if you have additional ideas, like, you're welcome to send them to me and Amy, because we are constantly looking at how to do that. And then I'll give you a little one. We can chat more about this too, but like, later next year, we'd love to do some more stuff in the volunteer space, especially software that helps churches to kind of recruit, train, manage volunteers in a significantly better way. I think that's a huge opportunity, and something that I learned. Even I just a real quick story. I ran this workshop. Me and Rick Holiday, I was like, we're talking about culture and staff and, how to do all this stuff. And we're like, open it up for questions. And the first questions is, how do I get more volunteers? And then the second question was, how do I keep my volunteers? And then the third question was, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've just missed the point completely. So, clearly the world needs what you guys are doing. And so there's just, I think, think just there's a real need, and it goes back to what Tyler told me on day one, right? Like, as a kids pastor, your job is two things: connect with kids and help train, reach, and recruit volunteers. And I'm like, of course it is, like, because that is the work of doing the ministry. So luckily I had Rick Holiday there to answer a lot of those questions, because so anyway, it's going to be real fun for us.
I love that. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing those things. That's and just for clarity, so you're not just running the curriculum through ChatGPT, right? It is a Spanish curriculum, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
I don't. Oh my gosh. ChatGPT speaks Spanish.
Maybe you would think. I don't know. That's a good question, but yeah, that's awesome. And I love that you're doing. My preschool director has always wanted like a special needs line of the curriculum that's different. It's always had like a special needs component to it. Not always, but Orange has had that. But to have a whole separate line with the training, that's all great. And I know you got more things you're cooking up. We are passionate about the volunteer training and development and recruitment stuff. And that is kind of it's like, you got to kind of get that right as a church leader to get everything else right. Otherwise, like nothing else works. So I love that you're thinking about how to help leaders with that too. We could probably talk forever, but thank you for taking this time to talk with us. Thanks for talking to churches, the conversations you're having behind the scenes. Kenny and I are very excited about the future. There's nobody we trust more than Amy and Chris. It's been great to get to know you. And you talked about building trust through communication, which is one reason why we wanted to do this conversation, because we felt like we've been able to build that with you behind the scenes, but let's take that in some type of a public forum. So
people do ask us. People ask us all the time, like, hey, what do you think? So that's one of the reasons why we want to do this video. Like, this is what we think. Amy, we're so grateful that you didn't give up. It probably would have been easier in a lot of seasons over this last year to just, you could go anywhere you want. And you stuck with it, and we're really grateful for you. And we know that you're holding the DNA of Orange in so many ways. Somebody's been there, so we're so grateful that you're still fighting this fight, and you're helping the new team know all this. And Chris, we're super grateful. Like, there's so many of us that like Orange. Orange has had such a significant impact on us personally, and so much of some of my favorite moments in ministry over the last 15 years have been very heavily impacted by the Orange strategy and the things that we fell in love with and resonated with. And I'm thankful for your willingness to partner. And I know it's not been easy, and I know it's been messy, and it's easy to sit in an armchair and judge what should have happened, what shouldn't happen. And I'm just grateful that you stepped up and you showed up and you said, I can help with this. So we're super grateful from behalf of those of us that do this and love Orange. Thank you, Chris, for leading in this season too. So
thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
All right. Thanks for joining us.